Do you like conversation on a variety of topics? Feel like no one wants to talk about the things that interest you? Tired of only hearing the same political, sports, or catastrophe talk? Yeah, we feel that way too. Join two high-functioning geeks as they discuss just about anything under the sun. We can't tell you what we'll be talking about each week because we don't know where our brains will take us. It will be an interesting conversation though, so hang on and join us. Here comes the Relentless Geekery.
I haven't seen bars going there now. It looks
Okay,
like.
I see mine.
Okay.
So what was it? Who knows?
Yeah.
Technology once again.
It's kind of funny. One of the things I was just talking about is I'm pretty sure that people have learned to do this, but I haven't become great about this. If you really were going to go into this to make sure that everything was going to be fine, before we start our sessions, we would always reboot, go into keep everything else closed, go into exactly the thing that we want, instead of having multiple things open in the background that maybe are using memory, instead of, whatever apps I had open that were draining, or actually that had switched settings or that had my input devices different. Like every one of those things is a possibility for something to get twisted, warped, tweaked.
Right.
And I don't always make sure I'm safe computing, if you will,
But how many times have you rebooted and then suddenly a hard drive has to have a scan, or there's an install that you didn't realize, or the router, right. You go to reset it and wait, now I'm not connecting at all. What's going on? Yeah,
exactly. One of the reasons I've done, as you know, many presentations at many different tech conferences and gatherings. And one of the things I try to do is you don't show up 5 minutes to go, you show up 30 minutes to go, so that when you boot your computer, it's going to take care of all that. I don't want an antivirus update right now. I don't want you to search for Wi-Fi and then give it up. And then when you get back, now there's only so many sessions they allow, and I don't have one of them. So you kind of want to just get it where you're bulletproofed. And then you're not going to get interrupted in the middle of your PowerPoint presentation because it really, really wants to update system software.
Yeah. And arguably, when I worked at the tech place where we fixed computers and stuff, there was a company, and this was 2008, let's say 7 maybe. But there was an auto company that wanted their computers repaired, but we had to go there. They were afraid to turn their computers off because they were afraid they'd never boot back up. These things at the time were already 15 years old, running right. Software that you couldn't update, couldn't replace, couldn't get to run on new systems. And there was so much grime and dust and dirt in the machine, we couldn't even blow it out because of the grease and everything.
Exactly. Honestly, this really is, back in my days type talk, but it's really true. I have also come into situations like you said, where you open the box up and it literally is like a cat lived in there. It's so full of hair and cat balls and dust. And I did indeed apply, compressed air to blow it all out, and it stopped working as well. Yeah. Those things have become kind of part of how it sparks across gaps and keeps everything going. And I didn't train the compressed air on anything so much that it blew components off the motherboard, but something was wrong and different. And so it's wow, the fact that you guys haven't maintained this and you've had it in a hot room for forever, who knows what alchemy has happened to your computer to make it that now it can only run in that really hampered, everybody else would consider this is terrible. Yeah. No, it had reached its perfect little, homeoelectrostasis.
Right.
Oh, well.
So, and with all the tech talk, I just rebooted my router because our first recording attempt didn't work. So everybody knows where
right.
we're at.
Right.
But we were discussing, you were talking a little bit about getting a mesh. I have a pretty good top of the line router. It's a small business router. It's designed for 24 connections wirelessly. It's supposed to extend, 1,600 meters or something like that.
Okay.
But we live in a house that's really old and blocks a lot of the signal. And literally, I can go downstairs, and if I'm just around the corner just a little bit, we get no signal. And I'm 30 feet away.
Right. There's metal in the walls, and so there's kind of pseudo Faraday cages that are blocking things. You know what I mean? Even just thicker walls. It's not supposed to be that the signal can't penetrate, no
Right.
matter the substance, but it is affected by brick
Yeah.
versus
Well,
drywall or
oh
something
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It's not even drywall. We've got stuff that's so old it's plaster, like on
Right. Plaster
boards.
over lath.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So I got a couple extenders, but that doesn't help a whole lot because the extender has to be in a spot that it can reach the router fairly well. And
Right.
the other problem with the extender we found out was if you have like an Xbox and you connected the extender, your ping time is a lot greater and it will kick you off of the session at times if it loses that connection between the router and the
Interesting.
extender and the
Because
Xbox.
it's both physical and logical, and if it's not getting its appropriate handshaking back and forth to keep trying to
Right.
uptune it, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was a problem. Now, they do offer with the router and the extenders I have the ability to have one quote unquote, thing. So you can connect to the same um, Wi Fi connection. So
Network
it
by
says.
name. Exactly.
But that didn't work for us at all. We tried, and it would not seamlessly switch between them as we went around the house. And
Got it.
it was a horrid mess. So that leads my whole discussion. You've looked into the Wi Fi mesh.
Right. So, and actually, what I did was, mesh has been available for like 5 years
Yeah.
now. Ever since and what I did was I didn't buy in right away because we really didn't need it. By that meaning, we don't have, 6, 8 family members that have multiple devices and stuff like that. We have Colleen and myself, but we do have that. We have times when we really need to be online for sure. If I'm doing a presentation via Zoom, I can't have stutter when she's doing all of her stuff for work. Even more important that it's anyway. So I kept reading and kept waiting for the comparisons to be okay. Now there's not one that seems to have solved it. There's a half a dozen. They're actively competing. Another one of those wonderful cases where let the tech people leapfrog each other, and eventually you'll get to where there's enough people that have it working, and prices have been driven down because of competition. That it's not a $500 or a $300 solution. I think I just bought a very well rated 3-node mesh for like $120 if I remember correctly, and that seems to be like the sweet spot, and it does like you want. Now that we've got double band means you get both your 2.4 and your 5 megahertz signal. I guess it does automatic switching back and forth, or so it claims. It does like load balancing within the house and beam forming, and you have to do a little bit of physically that. But the way that we're planning on doing it is we have similarly an old house. Our problem is vertical instead of horizontal sprawl, but I'm always up in Skynet in the attic. Colleen's down on the first floor, and our second floor is where we have our media center, if you will. We watch things on Netflix and other stuff, and where I do my laptoping. So having said all that, I was looking for something that, like, from reading the reviews, that matched as many of those characteristics as possible, that it was, and in having to get for sure perfect signal, I've not only gone with Wi-Fi throughout the house. In the past, I ran or had a phone company guy run an Ethernet cable so that it came down the side of the house and went into the first floor, so that her computer at her desk and her printer were attached directly to the AT&T router, because we have gigabit Ethernet and it's
Right.
wonderful zippy fast. And the way to maintain that zippy fastness is to continue to get 10 base, 100 base gigabyte cabling instead of Wi-Fi immediately degrades that. So my hope is that I'll be able to, for each of those, and I also have a cable that goes right into our TV. Instead of depending it only on Wi-Fi, I cable that. If I put I don't know if router is the right term. If I put a splitter that I know I have good signal coming to there, then that's my Wi-Fi point of presence for each of those places that I've got that cable coming in. They should be able to talk to each other via Wi-Fi or via Ethernet if they have some smarts that goes from like the master node to the subsidiary nodes. I don't know whether they're all peer-to-peer or whether there really is one master. I think there is, because that's the one that you're supposed to connect to your router. It isn't the guy that's going to take signal in from your internet provider. It does the Wi-Fi mesh throughout your house. So having said all that, I'm I think I've accounted for as many conditions as possible, as much capability as possible for the money, and the coverage was something like 6,000 square feet, and I don't know how much that is um, radiating outward from a central point or total coverage of the zones of control and stuff like that. I'm hoping it's that. And as I think I mentioned when we chatted about it a little bit earlier, one of the things I wanted to be able to do was we're getting a new garage built. And I kind of want to put a workshop out there. And one of the things I want to do is have the ability to do like computerized 3D printing or other things out there. And I don't want to run a cable either dangling overhead or put it in the ground. I want to have Wi-Fi reach my garage. It's only 20 yards from my house, if you will. And so that's another thing is that if I can, and this seemed to be the system where it isn't only a matter of it can only have three, you can continue to add nodes to your
Right.
network and they chat it up and they then rebalance for now I have a signal everywhere, I mean, even in the garage. And so I haven't done experimentation with the garage yet because it's not built. And I haven't done everything where I strained it in the house, but I'm hoping that this was not, well, I bought the 120. I should have bought the 240.
Right.
We will see.
So, with what you know of it, what's the difference between having a router and extenders and having this mesh?
So the mesh has smarter chips built into each of the devices so that it continually does tuning and retuning. A lot of things are when it establishes a connection first, it doesn't. It's kind of like old error correcting modems, where while you were doing the transfer, it would try to upgrade, and if it could, it would go faster. And then if it saw that there was enough checksum errors and various different things that it uses to judge the quality of signal, it would lower or raise your speed, your throughput, your speed, so that you could get better throughput. And I think that these have that instead of being that there's like one smart guy. Usually the extenders are nothing more than a signal booster for I get Wi-Fi signal and I spray it back out, but they don't talk to each other for where do I find myself in the house. And I don't know that I've seen this. I know that they have speakers that do, you put them in the room and you let them run their little tests about acoustics so that they balance what sound you're getting in your room based on the contours of the room, if you will. I think that these guys have some of that equivalent, that they're continually talking so that if they know that you're trying to blanket signal as much as you can, they account for dead spots by eliminating them, and they continually try to make it that it's not better or worse anywhere, but that it's kind of equal everywhere.
Right.
So I don't know what the chipsets are. It used to be that there was like 3 different chipsets for, the various different standards, C, G, N, X, A, the various different Wi-Fi standards that we've had. One of the things that I've read that's interesting is they will do the best with IPv6, which is, the coming, and it's already here, but it's not widely dispersed yet, for internet node naming standards. And that might actually be, I hope it's not a big hassle, because everything where I go is still, 4 dots, 4 sets of 3, if you will.
Right.
And I'm hoping that it isn't dependent on that, but that it only makes use of it, because, and this is kind of funny, I love geeking it up a little bit like this, but I don't know exactly. I experiment and I get a good result, and I don't try to get to perfection. When I first set up that what domain name finder I was going to make use of, I started off with, hey, I'm with AT&T, so I'll use theirs. And then I read a lot about how Google maintains their own servers, and there's OpenDNS that maintains its own domain name servers, and that if you put your 8.8.8.8 instead of the very specific AT&T things, you'll actually get faster updates of domain names. They have specific checking to make sure you don't get spoofed, you don't get rerouted. They actually not only give you better throughput, but better security about those kinds of things. And so that's what I've got, is I got a cascade of what I think are the best domain name services to make use of. And that's, again, logical instead of physical, but that's kind of what I'm waiting to see is, are they all aware of each other? That as these new developments come up with Wi-Fi mesh, I'm hoping that I don't get to anything where it's kind of funny. I know a lot about it to be able to drop terms, and I know how they work, but I'm hoping I'm not bullshitting now. That, the way that you get, like, I don't have a direct named address on the internet. It's always done by dynamic addressing so that I have that AT&T has something coming into my house, and even then I think it might be multiplex, so it does its own traffic management about that. But then once I'm in the house, I don't have a series of individual addresses, either MimeWise or anything, for the various different devices. That's always done dynamically. And the chipset handles that. It does all that granting of those things, and then if your signal drops, it gives you a new address, and so it never causes a problem because you have either 128 or 256 or whatever the number is of those available. And having said that, I'm hoping that that's going to be compatible as we move forward with IPv6 and Wi-Fi mesh, and that they're all kind of like, they must be, right? They must be talking to each other and giving each other samples so that when something comes to market, it's already compatible with all the things that are already out there and enough of the newest things so that you're not going to have competition. One of the unjoys of standards is that there sometimes are not perfect implementations of it, or that they've actually done the standard and then added their own little tweaks so that that's how they get the faster throughput. But it also means that you can't mix and match between the various different standards, So what I went with TP-Link for our Wi-Fi mesh, because another thing that they do is home automation. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there now for the Internet of Things. And I wanted to be able to say, if I'm going to have my light bulbs and my alarm clock and my stove and my whatever else I'm going to try to Internet of Things wise hook up, I kind of didn't want to have that. Now I have signal wars over who's blanketing the house with various different sets of standards and signals. It doesn't have to get to exactly all one, because I think that if you buy into kind of monopoly position, that you then make yourself a little bit of a victim, that whenever you move, you got to move everything forward. But I think that now Apple and HP and various others have made it that they really are cooperating. And so when you buy a Nest thermostat, it'll talk to almost all of the main routers, Wi-Fi providers, Internet of Things signals, all that kind of stuff, both physically and logically.
They even have APIs.
I guess, and that's true too, that if it doesn't work immediately, you can do, like my app on my phone will be able to talk, if not through the app directly, that you talk to another app that then translates your programming so that, I want it to turn on at 8 a.m. and go off at 1 a.m. And you know what I mean?
Right.
that the little snippets that you write to run those various different devices, that they don't just fail like a macro that used to work in Lotus 123 and then didn't work in Excel or whatever else it might be, Anyway,
and what you were saying about the mesh, that's kind of how I took it, because the problem I found with the extenders is you can't have one extender connect to another extender, which connects to the main point.
It's not daisy chainable. They all have to talk back to the mother. Okay.
Right. And my understanding of the mesh network was essentially it's like a Star Trek thing. You put all these little nodes out there and they all talk to each other in whatever way they need to. They kind of just take care of it. And I thought, I looked into that, but I'm like, okay, for like $30 each, I can buy 3 extenders and hopefully that'll work. And, and now I'm like, well, no, not quite as good as we want. The mesh might be the better choice.
Okay. And actually that's a wonderful thing. The more that I learn about like drone swarms, I think I've mentioned I've done all kinds of wonderful work in artificial intelligence and complexity and the handling thereof and emergent behavior from complexity. And that's one of the things that you learn a lot about is things that look to be really organized. A flock of birds in flight makes that perfect V. It isn't that there's a big program that's running in all the birds' head that says, hey, let's form a V. There isn't a leader duck that is, or leader goose that is saying to do that. It's much more that there's very simple rules that are governing that behavior. I should fly more efficiently. I should get a draft off of another goose if I can. And then out of those simple preferences, you get what looks to be very like the murmuration of birds in the air, where they seem to be amazing complex figures and stuff. But it's not because someone said, hey, here's where we do the triple bypass 8 figure. It's more that emerges from those kinds of things. And so drone swarms now, where they have, let's send a whole bunch of little cameras in on legs into a disaster site. And from the combination of all those figures, of all those cameras, we can get an idea of how the rubble is. Where is it stable and not? Where is there gas or water or something like that? And each of those it isn't necessarily looking for those things. It has monitors and sensors that let you look for it. But the gestalt image that you're putting together is based on the coordination of all those things, instead of it being that there's one big brain that's running the whole show. And so I think that's what's going on with Mesh, that they have relatively simple things about how to, if you will, they're the internet. They don't spend a moment worrying about why the signal isn't good. They just route around it. Try another channel, try another speed, try another something or other, and reconnect in a way that happens so fast, people wouldn't be able to handle. I don't want to check this 1,000 times an hour. I just want it to work. Well, this thing is a wonderful idiot savant that its job is only to say, how's the signal? How's the signal? How's the signal? And then whenever it sees a problem, it goes to work fixing it and then goes back to okay, all systems nominal. You know what I mean? I'll wait until I see another problem.
It's like the storks in Finding Nemo. Mine.
Right, exactly. And if anything, the fact that they do talk to each other and are continually saying, "How are you? How are you?" There's real power to be gained from hive minds, from that kind of cooperative behavior. But again, it's not. I love having a little hive mind in my house. I love the fact that these things really are talking to each other.
Right.
And this can segue into, why do I trust driverless cars? Because they're doing so much more work than a human being would humans are so ridiculously distractible and so ridiculously emotional that to have something that really is 1,000 times a second, and I think I'm actually underestimating, here's the 100 conditions that really matter. How's the light? How's the road? How's the road conditions? How's the car next to me, etc. And they are continually not just looking in your rearview mirror and checking out your side mirrors and looking at your speedometer, but they're checking everything all the time, and they will immediately adjust, probably faster than you can. And people have that illusion of, oh, I want to be in control because I'm the one that's going to avoid the accident. I don't think so. I think that cars, if they really are set so that they're conservative in that regard, they'll never allow for an accident. And of course, never isn't true. I just read about might have been a Tesla crash in Texas. Is that correct? But that's after I don't know how many millions of road miles. And so you have to play the odds, right? You have to say.
I remember just a couple years ago, somebody talking to somebody, and it's the same argument with the masks. These people are like, oh, I'd never, well, you don't understand the numbers and science and facts. You're just arguing. But they had said that there was a crash of a driverless car, and they realized what it was, that the semi was white and it was turning, and it was right by a light and a billboard. So the car,
it all looked white.
Yeah, what was the white? What was the billboard? So it crashed, and I think someone did die. But everybody's like, see, I'd never trust one of those. And they're like, but wait a second. We've been doing this for 3 years, and this is the very first crash.
Right. And also, how many traffic deaths are there every year? I'll grab a number out of the air, but I think it's maybe 50,000.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you found one, and it's terrible, tragic. I think that a lot of what's going on there is not so much that they care about whether someone died. The whole legal system that wants to have culpability. Somebody had to be responsible for that, so we can sue somebody, either the driver or the car manufacturer or the person who laid out the road or whatever. And then now I guess you're going to have to bring Tesla into the picture because their algorithms didn't handle every single case every single time.
And that was my argument. I said driverless cars definitely aren't going to be a problem, but only for the next 20 years when there's still drivers on the road. That's going to be the problem. It's not when every single car is driverless and controlled by the computer. That's not going to be where the problems are. It's when we have people that are, oh, I'm in the right lane, I'll just zip left in front of people.
While putting on makeup, while smoking a cigarette, while doing whatever guys and gals do when they're not caring about. Exactly.
Yeah. The computers, like the mesh, just like the mesh we were talking about. Every driverless car on the road is going, hey, how fast are you going? Hey, are you going to move over? Hey, when do you need to get off? And they're all like, oh, he's going to come over, I'll slow down. They talk to each other. They know what's going on, and they avoid each other. And can go at a higher rate of speed because it's easier for them to get each other around where you need to be. And
Yeah.
people are like idiots. If you have one driver on the road doing 40 and another driver trying to do 90, you're going to have a problem because they don't know what each other's doing. But if every single car is computer controlled doing
Kind of
100,
talking to each other. Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
100 miles an hour is still a snail's pace to a computer.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, this isn't necessarily breakthrough thinking, but I think where we're going to see is it's not going to be one size fits all and that we suddenly switch to electric cars. There's going to be gradual adoption. And where we're going to see early adoption is going to be in the places where the set of conditions that those computers have to follow are not 90% the same, but 99.9999. So the reason that they are doing a lot of driverless trucks first is because on the open road, big expressway driving, long distances, that's the least amount of changeable conditions. It really is that expressways are really well designed for here's how to handle an on and an off ramp. Here's how to handle spacing between yourself depending on how fast you're going. And that the fatigue and the other things that cause problems for people, that you really can cure those even better. There's no lane drift. There's no et cetera, et cetera. So then we'll work through that and we'll do maybe warehouse type things. You know what I mean? If a place does the same set of 30 stops all the time and it gets really good at that constricted area, it'll be post office trucks. It'll be where what it does is very specific, not everywhere you can drive everywhere in the United States with your car. And then we'll see it filter out. Maybe there's places where weather is more of an issue. If you're in the middle of Arizona and you have the same weather 340 days out of the year, maybe that'll adopt first. Whereas places where you go from 0 degrees to 100 degrees and all of the snow effects, heat shimmer effects, water on the road, whatever, maybe it'll take a while to get into that vast belt of changeable weather conditions. But I have confidence that science, technology, et cetera, is going to get better and better at the monitors that detect it and the algorithms that interpret it and the conditions that apply. Even if you said there's a whole bunch of different conditions, but we're not talking about the surface of Mercury versus the surface of Neptune. There's still a pretty narrow band of things that can happen on Earth. We're just going to get better and better about that, and we'll get to where it is safer to go that way. You know what I mean? It's quicker and more efficient. Yeah.
The other technologies, the road surface. I've read about a company that makes these hexagon polycarbonate that they can use for a road surface. They last longer than cement, and they can put signals in them. So signals can send to the cars right from the road surface that, hey, everybody stopped up ahead because of an accident, and it'll slow them down. There won't be crashes if there's snow and ice. And these things can be heated, so they keep the road clear without the salt trucks. And they can have LED lights in them. So in parking lots, they can say, oh, it's Black Friday. Let's reroute the traffic this different way. So they say red here and green go this way, and change that on the fly like a billboard.
All fascinating ideas. And in fact, that honestly, I think you're exactly right. And the cooperation between the people who are making the cars that are on the surface and what people are going to do to alter the surface so that, like, I don't know, the bandwidth is so available in ways that it isn't only about what human beings can see. And so, like you said, if you have lane markers that are really good at helping a car stay in the lane, not because you can see the white stripe, but because it has that series of, they used to call them bots dots. You know what I mean? Those were the little bumps in the road that when you drifted out of your lane, and you would, and it'd wake you up. Well, they'll start having that via signal. And just that, a car will be like, right now I get lane indicator stuff from my Prius where it really can detect, because of the lane markers, whether I'm right in the middle of the lane or drifting too far. And it's kind of funny. Sometimes when it beeps at me, it's like, I'm doing just fine. And then you look over and it's like, oh, I guess I really cut that corner just a little bit. And sometimes it really is. I don't know why it beeped at me. I really was just fine.
Right.
But I'd rather have it err on the side of caution too and say, be careful. This is one of those situations where you're doing a serpentine, and it really might be that you want to straighten that out instead of follow the road. Right. But there's other drivers on the road coming from the opposite direction, and you need to give them their lane, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So,
and that's what people don't realize. Oh, I don't want driverless cars, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but do you realize how many aspects of driverless cars already exist in the new cars? Detecting other vehicles, detecting people, stopping you automatically, doing the parallel parking
Absolutely.
automatically. I mean, do
Yeah.
you guys realize we're this close to a driverless car already?
It's in fact, this is very funny. We have two Priuses, two Prii, and one is one older generation, and the newest one will actually, when you set your cruise control, it will not only keep you at that speed, but it automatically speeds up and slows down depending on the interval that's being maintained. The other one does not. It wants to go 64 or whatever else it might be. Oh no, I mean 60. I mean 60, Your Honor. I always go the speed limit. So, having said that, it really you have to and you sit in your car, you have to say, okay, not the new red Sonia Prius, but the older Silver Surfer Prius. And this is not the one that's going to bail me out because I'm not paying perfect attention to my interval. I need to be aware that you're in old style where if you put on your cruise control, you kind of lashed the accelerator pedal to the ground and you need to intervene if you're coming up too quickly on somebody. So I think that's good training for even now, while we have these wonderful devices, there's various generations, and that we will still have to be aware of what are our settings, what's our default conditions when we get into the car, and how are we doing.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah,
And so, talking about the devices and all of that, and we've been talking a lot about health lately because we've both been having various health things.
little things,
Which,
exact big things. That's right.
yes. So I went the other day and got some test strips for my glucose meter. Now I don't check my sugar regularly, but I like to check it so I know what I ate, how it affects. That way I can adjust my thinking. Well,
Good for you.
now they have these new meters. Here's the thing. My test strips were outrageous. It was $80 for 50 test strips. And that's
Wow.
like, geez,
Okay.
man. So I started looking, okay, maybe there's a new meter with new test strips and it won't cost as much. They do, and they have Bluetooth. So the thing Bluetooths the results right to your phone automatically, and you can track it
Okay.
over time. Right next to it was a blood pressure monitor that Bluetooths right to your phone so you can track it over time. And they have a scale that Bluetooths to your phone so you can track it over time. And I'm like, I need all of this. Especially if I could get a mesh network and Wi-Fi everything right to my computer. That's what I really want. But I was like, other than the test strips being a lot cheaper, I'm like, that's what people really need to do is track it over time and see how it is average and
Yes.
this time of day after this meal or that type of thing. And
That's right. And when you see a spike, say, well, what was I doing then? And then you have in near real time, you can adjust your behavior so that you incur less of the hazardous and much more that you're on that nice even keel that you need to stay. So
right.
I hear you.
And,
Okay.
and and they even have, I mean, these are really expensive, but they have refrigerators, and I don't think it'd work for us so well. We have leftovers and whatever else, but it scans what's in your fridge so it knows what you're taking out and it can track the food that you're pulling out. And
Wow.
it will tell you, if you say, hey, I always want to have carrots, I pull out carrots, and there's no carrots left. Hey, you need carrots on your shopping list. And
Right.
it keeps track. So I could see all that stuff working together in a good way. What did I eat? What was I eating? What did I pull out of the, we need it in the cupboards also, but so
Exactly. That's, I am, it's kind of funny. One of the things that I get to is I'm sure I must have read a, cautionary tale science fiction wise long ago about that kind of thing where once things start monitoring you, you're going to get the auto nag feature where it's going to go, really? Pizza again? Really, Al?
right, right.
Really? And
That's Hitchhiker's Guide, right? That's
like that, exactly. So that's really handy, however. Like I've always thought, it'd be handy to not have to worry about. I have a really good memory, and but even then, I still have a little bit of a grocery list. And then while I'm wandering around, I often say, "Oh, that's right, I'm out of rutabagas or whatever else it might be." But to have that be pretty close to automated and knowing that there's never a time that I'm going to run out of milk because I didn't remember it, but that it told me, hey, you might want to pick up your milk, your carrots, your important stuff. And I guess what I would want to do almost is have that there's a priority that you can set for it so that
yeah,
I don't need to have cake in there all the time because I had a birthday cake on my birthday and now I'm not going to have another birthday for a year. But of course, the lettuce, the carrots, the things that I'm trying to eat more healthy and like the staples, I want to have milk, bread, that it always makes sure that you know that those are not only are they yes or no, but it's like this is 3/4 done, and that it actually has some interesting monitor for you pick it up before you run out instead of after you run out, and then
Well,
you overlay. You know what I mean? Like they've done in warehouse operations for a long time. What's your reorder point? So
and you don't even think about that. I mean, especially in the last year, the home ordering and delivery has picked up. So just connect it. If there's
right,
20 things that are staples in your shopping list, chicken and milk and cheese, and the 20 25 things, those monitor those. Your refrigerator says, hey, we're out of these 10 things. Now it triggers, it automatically orders it from Giant Eagle or wherever, and then some guy delivers it,
right. That
hands
it's not even
off.
you having to exactly. There's no interaction on your part to see that your box arrives magically at your
Yeah,
doorstep. Exactly. That's
magic.
it's worth jumping in a little bit for a moment. So I've been trying to do some of that. I have various different drugs, supplements that I take. Is there a way that I can not only get my atorvastatin, but have it be that it will automatically send it every 90 days, for the good low price that I get, and that I never run out? And most of those things, like I get things through CVS because that's the provider that my insurance requires that I make use of to do mail order drugs. And so that has worked out. Having said that, I have a couple other supplements, like I want to take garlic. And when I tried to set something up like that, Amazon is trying to move into pharmacy in a big way. And so I said, well, good, I'll be happy to take advantage of their good pricing in order to get this going. Well, what I noticed was the good price that it gave me on something, when I set it up for a subscription and it touted additional like 5% off because you're going to subscribe, that wasn't the case. That there's a little thing in their user agreement that says prices for these things might fluctuate and we will charge you the currently prevailing price. And so my $12 thing, no lie, was like $24. It was like twice as much. It's like, well, thank God I read the confirmation email that you sent me, because no, I'm going to turn off this subscription because I don't want it to be that even if your price fluctuates, I would rather choose a different alternative than the particular brand of yours that I bought, True Nature or whatever else it might be. I will more actively shop than just let myself kind of be on the leash from you. And so there's something about not trusting fully the fact that they're making these nice promises, but there's always that little fine print. The big print makes it all convenient and easy, and then the fine print means, now we gotcha. Yeah, don't think about this. Don't monitor this because we'll be happy. And there's all kinds of situations that have always been based on that. Magazines, when they say, hey, a dollar an issue, and then of course for your first year, and then it goes up to $45 a year. And well, I'd rather go to the magazine site that says we have a good price and all you have to do is order through us. There might be like a 3-month delay because we bundle all of our orders to get these good prices,
Right.
but I'm willing to do that little bit of work so that I don't go from $12 to $48, because the convenience is worth 10% to me, not 300%.
Right.
And they kind of count on people that are not watching. We're not monitoring and not caring. And so I wonder how many things are really like that. I'm in, as you know, I'm still in the market, and there's any number of things that are like, they handle magazine subscriptions. They handle the texts that go out, various different companies. There's one, Dexcom, that's handling how to live your life with diabetes and the ways that it will take care of all these things for you. Well, taking care of things for you sometimes means that you put yourself in the hands of someone there. It's not only your best interest at heart. They're in there to make money. They're in there to make their operations efficient. And if you look at it, if you watch it, you can see this isn't the best I could do if I just pay a little bit of attention. So I'm still the one that has to make the determination of what's the price of convenience. And I want my price of convenience to be what I just said, 10%. I don't want it to be that they doubled in price, but I got lazy. You know what I mean? Don't get lazy.
Right.
Don't do that.
And
So
so it's very easy to fix that, though. I mean, they just need to take from the investments. When you invest stuff, you can say, if it drops to this price, I want to invest this much more. Or if it goes above here, I want to sell. Or don't
that's right.
buy it if it's this much. And you can set all those parameters. So they should be able to, and I know they can, but for subscriptions and stuff, don't buy it if it's over this price. They just don't want to do that because that's not best.
See, that's exactly right. Some of the things that were I writing this app that I would have built in from the very start, that I have a price point that makes it easy, medium, hard to justify buying it. And nobody seems to have that thing. They have, what's the snapshot at this exact point of what the price might be, and they want to be able to manipulate that so that things go on sale and then they creep up over the course of time. I have a couple apps in my computer, if you will, one called Honey, and I think another couponing app where they monitor what you're buying and they say, hey, if you're not addicted to Amazon, if you're willing to go to other vendors direct from them and so forth, we'll tell you something as big as airline tickets and something as small as the set of 12 white socks that you just bought from Hanes or something like that. And I really don't mind, this is a terrible thing to say, whatever the big brother aspect is of they're watching me and they know what I'm buying and they're making that into a profile of me. And it's like, I don't think the world's going to be taken over because they know what underwear I'm wearing. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think so. And it really might be that there's, of course, this big mega brain that says, we know if you buy Hanes or Fruit of the Loom, we also know that you're a Republican or a Democrat. It's like, wait, what? You know
Right.
what I mean? And yet, I am willing to expect, and it's the price of being surveilled and the convenience price, all those figure into everything that I do because it's an ongoing series of transactions. A variation on the prisoner's dilemma. It's not only that I did this one thing one time, me and them are always building our reputations, our profiles. And if I find that a place is unscrupulous, that it didn't just go up by 10%, but by 100%, it makes me not only buy it, not then, but like never want to deal with them again. They really thought I was going to be a schnook that in one go, the next time they charged me, they were going to gouge me. And like, who does that? Somebody programmed that to happen. They said, that's our policies. We're going to give you the loss leader and then we're going to screw you. And I want a gentle, over the course of long time screwing, not an abrupt
See,
pushed up against the wall. I'm sorry that I'm going down this weird path, but you know what I mean. It's
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
you can tell when you're being abused, when you're getting shat upon by people that don't have your best interests at heart.
Sirius XM did that. I got some deal where at the time you had to pay for the web streaming separate from devices. Well, they
Okay.
gave you a special that you got web streaming and one device, which was my car, and it was like $60 for the year. I'm like, well, heck, that's a good deal for
That's
me.
a bargain.
Yeah,
$5 a month.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then I forgot about it. And it was like $320 for the following year. And I'm like, yeah, this is not worth it to me. So I called to cancel it. Well, we can't give you a refund. Okay, well, I'll keep it, I guess, but don't sign me up for renewal. Oh, but it's the best, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly they're offering it to me for $150. I'm like, wait a second, you just charged me $300.
See, as you know, like cable companies, maybe Sirius is too much like them. They're renowned for that, right? That they get you in early and then it's the frog in the pot of boiling water. They keep raising that temperature and they count on, we can bump it by 10%, but we're only going to lose 7% of customers. So on balance, we win big time when
Right,
you have 150 million customers or whatever else it
right,
might be. And even then, like that business model of, don't try to do right by them in terms of giving the best service for the money. What's the most insult we can give them before they leave?
right.
You know what I mean? What's the
Yeah.
most screwing that we can do before they're finally, damn it? And I hate that model.
Uh
And
huh.
yet, how many places have adopted it?
Right. Because
So
it
you have to
works,
kind of be
unfortunately.
aware because it works. Exactly.
It,
That renewal thing that it's always way down on the bottom, and it's not even a box you check now. It's like, this is the default setting, and you'll have to tell us within 12 weeks before whether you want this to continue.
right,
Well, I always think to myself, they don't know who they're dealing with. I will put a tickler in my
right,
calendar that says, as of this date, I'm going to look for the email that says, hey, and I'm going to indeed turn off a service if it looks like they're getting ready to do me wrong. You know what I mean? I'll go to another vendor and get a better price. Anyway,
and
anyway.
we mentioned investing, and we have talked investing before. I'm not investing as highly as you yet, but the meager amount I have I was just checking it, and it's up like 88% over the last couple months. So
Good for
not as
you.
glorious as
Fantastic.
you, but not too bad.
No, and in fact, unfortunately, I'm a little bit different. I've been in high growth for a long time, high tech and so forth, and there had to be a correction eventually, and it has happened for me. So I'm down off my high, and I'm whereas I was at, no lie, like 240% or something like that. I think I'm down to like 188%.
which is still
So
better than
I'm
most people
yeah,
would
and
get.
that's over the course, not per year. That's over the course of since inception, which was the first of 2019. So over the course of 2 years and 2 months, that's still very nice. But it's kind of funny psychologically. You're like, give me my money back. I
Right.
had that money. And, come on, world, get in line with this is a great company, and you should be, giving it the multiples that say we know it's going to get to the point of profitability and places. And so it's kind of funny. I nowadays so much can talk about this too much. I try not to, but I think that Motley Fool is really, really good with its analysis of here's what still, if you're thinking 5 years out, not 3 months, these are still very good bets because they have compelling technology. They have a competitive advantage. They have the way that they're managing their business will get them to profitability, and that right now they're in growth mode instead of value mode. And so that is still a more exciting place to be for me. Colleen is very much in value mode, and she's had much more the same experience as you by doing things that are more S&P 500 and Dow index oriented. She had a nice steady rise, especially with the stability that we've seen with Biden and his getting into office and the various different plans we put forth with the stimulus package, the infrastructure package, and how America is back to being in the business of business, not
We
back into
made
being
America
the.
great again.
See, I don't know about great yet. We have so much work to do
We're
because we
making
took a
America
four
great
year,
again.
we took a 4 year, wow, I had a leech on me. I had a parasite on me for 4 years, and it drained so much of my sap, my strength. And the people that have that, they don't want to give that up readily. So they're still trying to manipulate in every way the financial laws and the voting laws and everything that they can to get back to those abuses.
It's
But at
it's
least we have education again. We have an energy policy again. We have an environmental policy, not just you guys go screw everybody you want and we'll stand back and in fact we'll help you. So
the
boy,
the
I'm
the slogan they said was "Make America Great Again," but what they
right.
really mean is "Make America Great Again for me."
For me, exactly, for that 2% of the population that are going to manipulate the other 98% to saying,
Right.
this is great. I'm a temporarily disadvantaged millionaire. And I know that if you take, you know what I mean? Trickle down all over me. I deserve all the
Yeah,
trickling.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Well,
So
slightly. Oh, go ahead. You got something with that still?
no, it's just that, I think that some of the places that I'm most enthused about, as I think I've mentioned before, I'm not only in it to make money. I love saying, where do I want the world to go? What kind of world do I want to build? And so it's get those medical technologies that are going to be defeating diabetes, defeating cancer, defeating new pandemics. And I just like NovoCure, which is one of my kind of moonshot bets, just announced that they're the ones that do um, uh, electromagnetic fields can defeat cancer when combined with other cancer defeating technologies. They're not enough by themselves, but they assist in survival rates and shrinking of tumors and so forth. And they just hit stage 3 testing, which is a really important milestone. That's where a lot of places have to say, sink or swim, keep going or abandon. And they just proved efficacy in a convincing enough way that they're moving towards FDA approval. And so I don't have a lot of wildcat bets like that. It's not like, oh, we discovered that this particular amazing serum is going to cure you of everything. But where there seems to be a lot of technology behind it, and they're doing the due diligence of all the testing and the cooperative, et cetera. I'm very happy not only that my silly investment is doing well, but that we're going to have a better way to cure cancer. That's the world I want to live in. The fact that we've thrown 60 years worth of money incredible money at cancer solutions, but cancer is an intractable foe. It mutates and it's just so insidious, kind of like what we're dealing with COVID. It has all different effects and it gets into different parts of your body and da 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 da. So having said that, I'm just really happy to see, do we have a diabetes breakthrough? Do we have a cancer breakthrough? Do we have an Alzheimer's breakthrough? And I'm willing to kind of put money into, I support you, not in a charitable way, but in a more like, these guys are really doing the work, not just wishful thinking. I want them to break through.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased about that. I've had a couple of good newses like that, and I'm into Tesla, so that I'm into the driverless cars, and I'm into, I don't know, a lot of my companies, I don't have anybody that's like, hey, smoke more. You know
Right.
what I mean? I don't have anybody that's doing active harm. And I have a whole bunch of places that really seem to be consumer oriented and fix the world, make the world better oriented instead of just how much money can I wring out of the system.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit of virtuous investing, but it's that I'm a futurist and I want to live in a good future. I want to live in a future of jetpacks and Jetsons. I don't want to live in a future dystopic of like, well, we're all, I got my machete and I'm going to cut down any zombie that comes towards me. That's
Right.
not the future that I want.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Along with that, with the investing in that, so like you, I've been going through some of my stuff. We talked about this a bit.
Okay.
And I've got a set of comics, and I'm like, I really don't want to touch these, like my Star Wars ones.
Them exactly. Yeah.
The classic Star Wars. I'm wavering a bit on the semi newer ones.
Okay.
Partly because Marvel, when you buy them, they have a code, and you can get them then digitally. Well, some of the physical issues are like skyrocketing, a couple $100 each. And I'm like,
Okay.
So I'm looking at this because I want to use the sales of some of this stuff to fund newer endeavors, like going to author conferences or some of the other things I'm doing this year, and editing for my books, which it's an investment, not just spending the money, So
I hear you.
Colin,
as I think, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, Colin was going through some of my other boxes, which I haven't even looked at in 5 years. Have just been sitting there, and he said, "Hey, these comics are worth like $500-600, and you don't even care." I'm like, "Great, let's sell them." So I've been doing a lot of that, like you've been doing too.
Good for you. I mean, it really is a joyful thing that something you bought, you enjoyed it, you read it, and then you socked it away. That like 10, 20, 30 years later, it's like, oh, the world loves that still, and I happen to have it and a copy in good condition.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy when that has happened. I think I mentioned I've posted a couple things where who knew it's not only the obvious ones like Giant Size X-Men #1, where I know that was a heavy value guy, and I kind of hoped for it when I bought it. I've always loved the X-Men, had no idea at the time, because it really was, the X-Men was not a major Marvel title, but then it became one. It became this huge franchise, and then the movies hit, and then, you know what I mean? So I've made a point of kind of holding on to those guys and keeping them in good condition, because I had suspicions, whereas I'm so happy that, like, who knew Guardians of the Galaxy was going to take off? Who knew Black Panther was going to become as big as it is? I think this is, so far as I'm about halfway through my collection. Right now, the single most valuable thing based on current market is something like Werewolf by Night #44. And it's because it's the first appearance of Moon Knight.
Right.
And so it's that perfect combination of, all right, it was an existing title, but not a big seller. But then a character came in, kind of not #1, where everybody's going to buy it speculatively, but 44. Who cares about number 21 or 44? But Moon Knight now about to be in his own movie, and he's had amazing, interesting staying power in terms of how many groups he's been in, how many incarnations his book has had, how many big name authors have wanted to work on him, because the kind of crazy superhero is an interesting character to write. And so, having said all that, here I am sitting on, like, really a tasty mint condition copy of something that's worth many, many thousands of dollars if I get it appropriately graded and that the market stays hot. And that, who knew when I bought this thing for 50 cents, $1, that it would soar to tens of thousands. It's very heartening,
Yeah,
in fact, man.
Sorry. I've got the Marvel Presents that has the first appearance of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's one
so like that. Exactly. See, it's and in fact, this is kind of a weird stat to throw out, because I have collector's software that does automatic comparison to the big network of what are things going for in terms of eBay and comic book auctions and the various different sources they use to get to a true value of a comic. And when I look at what I've spent for comics over the course of time, and this is like, I think I'm about 22,000 out of 40 now, and I look at what they're supposed to be worth nowadays, I've made like 36% a year.
Wow.
In comic books. And like, I was silly, crazy, unbelieving of disbelieving how I could be making so much in the market. Who knew that maybe all along it was my comic books, my stubborn hold on to these, mom and dad, while I'm at college. Please don't throw these away. Keep them in good condition. Don't just use them for placemats while I'm eating cereal. I really have, since probably 76, everything of mine is in mint condition. That's the first time that I was buying from a buying service and not just letting people paw through it on the spinner rack before I got to it and stuff like that. So I have almost 50 years of comic books in really good condition, and a whole bunch of great stuff has happened since 76. All kinds of character introductions. I mean, not the obvious ones like Spawn and Deadpool and, but like all those, like I have whole runs of Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, that every single one of them is worth $100 if they're 40 years old.
Right.
So it's just, I kind of laugh about it. Please, anybody who's listening to this podcast, they're not in my house. Don't come rob my house.
Right,
You're not going to find
exactly.
anything here.
You know what I mean? Room.
Don't hold me hostage to make me give you my comic books. Don't be a jerk about this. But it's that silly dream of, I've always loved these and I kept them in good condition, and maybe one day, and the first time that I sell something that's going to be like, and then Colleen and I went to Europe.
Right.
That's going to be such a wonderful story to tell. My own little comic book story.
Right.
Is that I was a stubborn little kid that held on to everything, and then it came true.
It started a business by selling a bunch of comics. So I mean, you funded a business. So
I did. In fact, what you were just saying about the only time that I ever sold things was, to my chagrin, I sold my first 100 Fantastic Four and my first 100 Spider-Man to start my consulting business. And nowadays, when I think of what those might be worth nowadays, it's just hanging your head in tears. But that was what I was doing back then, is I needed to be able to, I was working on the Moscow Commodity Exchange. I needed to be able to afford Russian lessons. I was doing state-of-the-art technology where, when I was working on my trading systems for Gambit, I needed to be able to have the 5 CD reader, not one at a time. I needed to have a whole bunch of stuff that just was, it was an investment. That's exactly the word that I use and that you use now. I don't think I just kind of turned comic books into, and then I had more licorice. No,
right.
I really did do it to kind of accelerate my career. I did great things that now forever they're on my resume. I learned a ton. I took on all kinds of assignments that every single time I did that, I had another line on my resume for another technology that I was good at, another industry I'd worked in. So in the overall, I can't, and it's kind of funny, I sold them to a good home. It wasn't just to a comic book store. I sold them to a friend named Orville, and I hope that he is reveling in the fact that he's now got, man, if you saw my copy of the Spider-Man with Molten Man on it, where it was like a black cover with, gold and red, and it just, not a crease, not a ding. It was a work of art. And he has that now, so that the people that, when he finally gets that graded, CGC and CGCS are going to be like, this is the nicest copy we've ever seen of this. He's going to be a happy guy. So that's a cool thing too. You know what I mean? I hope you have that same experience, that you got wonderful conditioned copies. And to just jump, I'm going to jump on it for a minute. I have all kinds of stuff. G.I. Joe, US-1, things that I couldn't care less about. And yet the world likes Ghost Rider. Who knows why the hell the people think Ghost Rider is a reasonable character? That sucks. And yet they're worth a lot of money. So yay me, Marvel Spotlight #4 or whatever like that. Come and buy my Ghost Riders. Right, I am so happy.
Yeah. And, okay, so I'm going to do a segue transition here. We've talked multiple nerd topics. Imagine that today. So I got to ask, why have you never seen Big Bang Theory?
You know what? It's a little bit like Seinfeld, which I've seen very few of, that I tried watching it from the start because someone told me that this would be something that you would like, and it sure seemed from the description. And honestly, it wasn't the number of laughs per minute, that it wasn't immediately endearing characters. All those things that Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel used to say about movies. Do you care about what's going to happen next? Is there any personal interest on your part? It didn't take. I'm not sure why not, but it didn't take. And in fact, this is a weird, sad confession. I am geeky as all hell, but when I'm amongst the worst of the geeks, I'm very aware of that's debilitating geekery. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? If you love comic books so much, but you don't want to spend a minute away from your comic books that you can shower, maybe you need to like have more balance in your life. And when I've been to comic book conventions and science fiction conventions, and this is here goes my geek audience. I remember I have often been with my younger brother and his friends. I was kind of the guy that brought them to things for the first time. First Rush concert, first Comic Con when Comic Con was. Uh, anyway, so we were in, I think, an early Gen Con when it was still in Wisconsin, not in Indianapolis, and we kind of stood around and said, "Wow, there's only like fatties, geeks, and losers here," and we were like, well, which one of those are we?
Right.
Because we're very comfortable here. We belong here. We love the wargaming. We love the D&Ding. We love all of that. And so, you know what I mean? It was, even then though, I could blend back into society. I didn't get like Star Wars tattoos on my face. I didn't only have that as
Went
an
back
interest. I've
into
always had
society.
multiple things that I could do with my life. And so there's something about when a show is so, I don't even know, stereotypically geeky, or like that it hurts me to think I've seen people that had that problem that really didn't know how to talk to another person, that like get all stuttery and weird and sad. And I don't, this is kind of sad. I don't like the humor of discomfort can be interesting, but not for 30 minutes at a time, where it's like, is everything on here going to be about they can't communicate and that they don't know what love is and that they kind of rank on each other? Friends are good to each other, but then there was if I remember some of those early episodes, they were very competitive and very much like insult humor back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I know might be, so sorry, I've gone on too long because now it seems like I'm rationalizing, but in short, it didn't take. And maybe I didn't give it enough of a shot.
Well,
I've had a number of other shows where when I watched it 7, 8 episodes, then I got it, then they got it. They were a better show.
yeah.
They learned their characters and that kind of stuff. So it sure seems like I should have watched every one of 10 seasons and I should be able to recite 12. Thank you very much. Do you know what I mean? I should be able to like get
Well,
all of the humor that's there, because I'm sure that it was a gold mine that once they knew they had a wonderful geeky show, all of our geek humor was evidenced in it.
oh
And I
yeah,
would have said, oh, I get that. Oh, I know that. This is not for everyone, but I get it. And yet somehow I didn't do it.
and
So you've loved it. You've seen every episode. You are a
twice,
longtime fan. Good for
right?
you, man.
But
So, okay.
here's the thing. I was surprised. There's a lot of mentions that just really, really hate that show, and I've not completely figured out why. And it could
Because
be
you
a
think
lot
it's
of,
too accurate a portrayal?
well, that could be it too. But I think what you said is, they were like, well, it's too stereotyped. Okay, but you could say that about any comedy
Any
show,
show.
any action show. I
Here's
mean,
the jock. Here's the pretty
yeah.
girl. I know what you're
I
saying.
think, like you said,
Absolutely.
though, it hit too close to home at times. And I didn't start right at the beginning. I came in at like season 4 somewhere. There was
Okay.
an
Where
episode
they had
where,
their groove going, and
yeah.
okay.
So there was an episode where Wolowitz, he's the NASA engineer guy, he created a robot hand that was supposed to work on the space shuttle. And that was really kind of cool. But well, to keep it clean for the kids at home, let's just say he was also the horn dog of the group, and he's looking at this robot hand, and he goes, "Huh." And so then suddenly,
What
there
else
you
could
go,
that
you
be
get it.
used for?
Yeah.
Of course.
So then he gets a frantic call to his friends because the robot hand got stuck.
Right. And isn't letting it go back from
Exactly.
purple to pink.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't
Oh
know
man.
why, but several people told me I should watch that episode. I don't know why. I was single at the time, but
That's funny.
so I watched it and I did laugh, and I watched a few more, and I went back and watched the early ones, and yeah, the early ones are a little harder. But I think what happened is later, they at the beginning they were very stereotyped, and they very much were every nerd joke and ragging on geek culture, and that almost it was
Okay.
a lot more mean, almost, in a way, like you said. But then the characters developed and people started loving the characters, and they diversified a
Okay.
bit to their own personalities more. And I guess, really can relate. And it's funny because Gina and I talk all the time how when she started watching Big Bang Theory, that she claims that helped save our relationship at times.
Because she
Because,
understood you a little bit
yes,
more?
it
Oh
absolutely
my.
100%. She would watch it and go, "Oh my
Interesting.
God, that is you." Of course, she points out, she's like, that part of Sheldon is you, and that part of Leonard is you, and that part,
Interesting.
there's different parts of each
Okay.
of them. And she'll giggle and laugh just because it's like, wow, we have been in that situation. So, that's something.
Maybe that's something I should do for Colleen and I, that she gets to, like, it'll be couples therapy for us. You know what I
Yes,
mean? It's like, you know what I mean? That
I
she'll
even
be able
had.
to say, so that's what you were thinking or not
Yes,
thinking when you did that thing. That's why
yes.
you are as you are in some ways,
Yeah,
you know?
you
So,
just you should
okay.
pull up like season 3 or 4 and watch just a few random episodes and see if it catches you
Okay.
more. I'd be interested to see if it does. It might not. Not everything's for everybody. Regardless, I'm sure not every cop watches every cop show, though.
Right.
That may be fairly true.
Yeah. What's funny, having said that, I really do love when you discover something that you have not been aware of before, that you had kind of given short shrift. And then when you discover you like it, like, I have 12 seasons of this to watch.
Yeah.
What a treasure trove. I really get to sit, and thank you. I really will give it a try. Maybe that'll be like a late comer's perspective
And
on.
see what
I
you
caught
think.
up on Big Bang Theory and I got past that. There's any number of series. I'll tell you, I really liked the Highlander movie, and I tried watching the Highlander series, and I was like, they're repeating themselves by episode 5. There's nothing new going on here. How many times? Anyway, that was another one where it's like, I expected to like it. And I was like, pissed about, didn't you get the essence of the series and why it's cool like I did?
That's funny
You know?
because I liked the series better than the first movie. I thought the first movie
Wow. See.
had so many things that it could have done that it didn't. It kind of let down. And
Okay.
again, that's another one. I didn't start at the beginning. I was like season 3 or 4 of Highlander before I got into it. And then I went back and watched the others. So maybe I'm just hitting these at their high points, catching the groove.
Interesting. Here, it's time for blasphemy on Al's part. I also did not immediately jump onto Supernatural. I tried watching it
I
from the
didn't either.
start, and there was one episode that was like, I don't know, danger to children or something that was a little bit too weird for me. And I was like, I don't know that I want this every week. And yet, when I returned to it for like one of those things like, well, I really do like shows like this. I like the Kolchak
I should
X-Files
like this.
episodic. Exactly. There's a new menace each week, and they're building the mythology. And when I read, probably in Entertainment Weekly, about it wasn't just about a new menace each week. It was that there was this underlying mythology of the Christian angel mythos and what happened, who went to hell and who got out and all that kind of stuff. And then when I gave it a more sustained try, I really liked it. And so I returned to it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking now, is that sometimes, because there's such a wealth of things to try watching, I don't give things, I
Right.
don't know, I don't give them one episode. I usually give them half a dozen. And then that's what I think is, if I haven't liked it after a half dozen, it's just not mine. It's just not the one for me. And yet sometimes, like, I don't know, they take a dozen episodes, they take a couple seasons to find their feet and become high quality. And then the reason you watch the first episodes is to get all the information that's going to inform the later things,
Right.
instead of it being that they were great quality from the start.
Well,
So
Supernatural, my kids got into that, and I watched it. I'm like, okay, this is you guys enjoy it, whatever. Um, and then they kept into it more and more, and it never ended. So I started watching some of it with them, and then Gina and I met, and she loves Supernatural, so we started. So as a family, we were watching like season 10
and
together.
that's a cool thing in and of itself. It's something the
Yes,
whole family loves.
so that
Exactly.
helped.
Yeah.
Just that fact helped me enjoy it more, and I
Yeah.
really grew to like the characters. But if you do go back to season 1, I even watched it recently, and I was talking to Colin. I'm like, wow, or no, Megan, wow, the season 1 is so different because the characters are not there. They don't act
Right.
like they should. They think differently. Because I said Dean wouldn't have done that. Sam wouldn't say that.
See, exactly. Maybe that's it. There was more sibling rivalry instead of brotherly
Yeah.
love. There was more that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And let me
Okay.
put it this way, Gina was bawling when it ended with this finale, and she was just crying her eyes out.
He's
And
dead. He's on his own. Yep.
they did
Okay.
something very, very interesting. We watched episode 19 of the last season, and it was everything pretty much culminated and highlight and was ending, and you saw it, and it was a great story, and it did really well as an ending, I thought.
Right.
And I got done with that. I'm like, now hold on. As far as a series and a story goes, they just ended it. It was done. The arc, everything, the epilogue, it was all there. There's nothing I could think of that would make a story better to go one more episode. Well, they did go one more episode.
And then they did. Yeah.
But I'm like, this doesn't even make sense to me why they would do this. And it's a different type of ending. Well, here, the producers knew that different people were wanting different endings. So they actually created it as a 2-ending show. And they basically put the word out, pick the one you like the best, and that's your ending.
Oh my, that's what an interesting thought. How cool is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay.
And
I guess after having heard about like Sopranos falling on its face with its last episode, they were determined to not go out with a whimper,
right.
but with a bang, 2 bangs. So
right,
okay.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think of episode 19, that's the end for me.
Okay.
That's the final. But I like how the last one ended too.
Yeah, 20 is the coda that goes a little bit further, and it's kind of fun, like you said. Maybe it ties off all the story arcs and stuff, but there's something more satisfying or differently satisfying about seeing where things went from there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
different.
Very cool. Okay,
so
all right.
And again, there aren't any shows hardly except Hee Haw that have gone that long. Hee Haw went for like 33 years. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
That is crazy.
Don't think I watched it after the 60s, so that's wow. Right. Okay.
Yeah, Chet Atkins, he was on there for like his whole career.
Wow.
Yeah, or not Chet Atkins. Who was it?
No,
was it Chet Atkins?
No, a different guitarist.
Yeah.
Hi. I can hear him saying it. Hi, I'm Roy
Clark. No.
Roy Clark. That's it. It is Roy Clark. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. But, so, anyway, Supernatural, great. I fell in love with the show. I liked the boys and stuff. So I definitely grew into it. And what was the other one? Did you ever watch Scorpion when it was on?
No, I did not. But I'm interested in that one because I like the whole, surveillance team and turning the tables on bad guys and all that kind of stuff. Right. So
it definitely that is one of them where I think they had an idea for it and they did it well in the first season or so, but then they got away from it after that. And
interesting.
And it's only 4 seasons. And to warn you, it ended on a cliffhanger at season 4, and then they
didn't finish it.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So, but I will say, we were talking about the stereotypes and relating to it. My cousin's kid or grandkid has autism. He's only 7. They've diagnosed it. This kid, I mean, if you didn't know he had autism, spend 5 minutes with him and you would know he has autism. He's one of those that he is Sheldon. I swear to God, in every way. Let's put it this way. The other night we were online playing Xbox, racing, Need for Speed. Mm-hmm. And his grandma, Pam, got a phone call and she had to put her controller down and take the phone call. Well, we kept racing. You can't really pause it online. And it's not that big a life-threatening deal or anything. Right, so she's like, forget it. Just you guys go. And we kept going. Finn broke down crying because we were continuing to race and Nana was not in the race. She couldn't race and we were leaving her behind. And he kept yelling at us, stop, don't let her behind. And it's like, Finn, it's okay. He didn't get that. Of course, then Gary said, well, you pick up the controller and race for it. He goes, oh, okay. And it was like switched off like that. And he was like, great.
That's wild. Yeah.
And so they watch Big Bang and they watch young Sheldon and they're like, oh my God, that is Finn. They can see it. And I think in a lot of ways it helps relate to him because it can get very frustrating. It can be very difficult to to
Yeah,
deal with
with the
that.
occasional meltdown or the occasional
Yeah,
what's going on here. Okay,
it's
yeah,
tiring sometimes because you have to constantly be aware and paying attention. But watching the show helps
right.
them
You're
because
not alone. Other people have this, and they
exactly.
get through life.
Yep.
Exactly.
And they
Okay.
could go,
Yeah,
well, he's having a Sheldon moment or something like that. So it's not as stressful in that. So that's another
that's a
good
good
thing I'd say.
observation. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
So
Okay.
cool, man. Wow.
Okay. As always, a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for great conversation. And, we're making the world a better place. We
We
talk
have to.
about cool things. I have a number of friends that are now saying, they really do sit there with like their apps open, their notepad open. Because when we mention books, music, whatever that you should be listening to, I will say that Dean Koontz Frankenstein books are really good. 5-issue series. I'm already on the 5th one. I said I wouldn't binge it, but it had to happen because they're really enveloping and good. And just that I went back and listened to more of the Bonzo Dog Band. I don't know if any of you've ever heard of them because they're kind of from the 60s, 70s, but Neil Innes, who did a lot of music with Monty Python, came out of here, as well as a couple other people. Good. They're very witty, and they're very good in that song parody way of, boy, this song sounds so much like the Turtles, the Beatles, the Dave Clark Five, that they are able to capture the essence of music while doing their own particular demented spin on it. And so I had spotty a couple vinyl albums, and then they're really hard to find, and then CDs, they didn't seem to get reissued, but finally somebody put out one of those little 5 CD box sets. I'm like, this is the most Bonzo Dog Band I've ever had. This is so wonderful to get a big dose, a big deluge. So that's what I've been listening to this week, is catching up on the Bonzo Dog Band.
Well, I got Gina the Garth Brooks Legacy Collection LPs that came out. So
I like him, even though I'm not much of a country music fan. He's got enough interesting edge, talent. I like him. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So I've been listening to some Garth Brooks, and I'm not a huge Garth Brooks fan like you, but now I know some of the songs. If she's going to listen to Def Leppard, I've got to listen to Garth Brooks. So,
there you go. Exactly. Doesn't he have the Thunder Rolls? Doesn't he have Friends in Low Places? I love some of his songs. Oh, yeah, he's got a bunch of good stuff. Yeah.
I've got a good story I'll tell you sometime about Friends in Low Places.
There you go. And one final thing I'll say is, so we got Playhouse Square coming up, has their series. They really are starting in the fall because we think we're coming out of COVID. One of the shows that they're presenting is a Temptations music box, a jukebox tribute, if you will. And I love the Temptations. It's like kind of like what I said with my dad liking B.B. King and others. Like, what am I, a big kind of white Lithuanian guy loving the Temptations? Because they're amazingly, wonderfully talented. Motown has great sound. That I have a 5 CD box sets of them called like Emperors of Soul. And you listen to this 3rd CD, probably 30 cuts, and like 20 cuts are some of the best music ever made. It's Can't Get Next to You, and it's Psychedelic Shack, and it's Papa Was a Rolling Stone. It's like, God, these guys were great.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that show because I'll be singing every single song.
Listen to the bass lines. The bassist for Motown, James Jamerson, he did something like 85% of all the bass lines for Motown.
Exactly. I'm trying to think. I know they're not the Wrecking Crew, but there's a name for that Motown house band. It'll come to us, but I knew that. I knew that there was 3 or 4 guys that figured onto all kinds of good Motown, and that they were just that. They could pull beautiful music out of the air. I love that. The perfect groove, the perfect bass line. Wonderful. Okay.
Stuff. All right, man.
All right. Take care, Steve.
Have a good one. You have been listening to the Relentless Geekery podcast. Come back next week and join Alan and Steven's conversation on geek topics of the week.